Welcome, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for another community conversation. I am very happy to see all of you and very happy to welcome our guest for this particular conversation, Yasoda Mensah. Yasoda, thank you very much for being here. By way of introduction, Yasoda is the director of Three Leaf Farmden and the owner of Trifolia Natural Products and Botanicals. She is dedicated, and her projects are dedicated to to education, sustainability, utility, and self-realization. She's been a practitioner, educator, and counselor in the Bhakti Yoga tradition for over 30 years, and has lived and worked on 3 continents, during which time her passion for and knowledge of the earth, environment, health, and herbal medicines has grown and deepened. Yasoda is deeply committed to the environment and sustainable agriculture practices and respect the earth and its myriad of life, plant-based and otherwise. She enjoys collaborating with local organic farmers and growers to bring the best quality produce to the table, and works with the Gitanagari Yoga Farm in conducting herb walks and workshops and classes as part of their retreats throughout the year. Yasoda holds a bachelor's degree in microbiology, a master's in therapeutic herbalism, and is a certified facilitator through the Institute of Applied Spiritual Technology. Yasoda, welcome, and thank you again for being here, and welcome all of you who came in while I wasn't looking. I'm very grateful for all of your attendance here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. Yasoda, you've been practicing Bhakti Yoga for almost 4 decades now. Can you tell us how you got started on the path of Bhakti Yoga?
I think about this question a lot. I've been asked it a few times, and I think with everybody that it's not a one-off thing. I when I look back over the time of my finding out about this path and coming on it, it feels like, and I'm probably going to use a lot of allegory in this conversation, but it feels like you are walking along, or you find a path, like when you're in the forest and you see a clearing, like when I take people through a forest bathing or through herb walks, and we go through like a forested area. What I'm really doing is following where the deer have been, because that's the deer push all the bush and brush aside, and we follow where the deer goes. So there's actually a path there that if you were not looking for it, you wouldn't see it. But if you are looking for it, you see it. So I kind of feel like that is how I came into Bhakti. Like there were little pebbles on the way that got turned over, and somebody gave me a book here. I heard something on the television here. I saw like devotees chanting in the street here. And so all of these little things came together, and like there were like pebbles being turned over on a path until, oh, this is actually a way to go. So that was a process over a number of years. It actually, I would say it started when I was 12, and I was watching a popular music program in England called Top of the Pops, similar to Soul Train or something that you'd have in America,
Uh-huh.
And the Bhakti devotees were chanting on that program, and it was like, who are these people? But at 12 years old, you don't really think more than that. And then at 19, I got a book, and at 21, I got more books. And at 22, the Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, a Swami in the Bhakti movement, came to my university and gave a lecture, and all of these things kind of just accumulated into I think just like a waking up of and a waking up and a realizing that all the questions I had been asking up until that point, like who am I, what am I doing here, what is this really all about? And those questions I'd been asking those questions since I remember writing poetry at 16. What is life all about? And why are we here? And why is there so much suffering in the world? And it's got to be more than that.
Hmm.
So those are the questions I think that were answered as kind of the light kind of started going on. So other than a chronological, okay, I got this book at this time of the year, and I got this book at this time, and this. So like on the flipping over of pebbles is what came to my mind when I thought about that. So yeah.
That's a wonderful analogy. And I'm so happy to know that the deer on your property do actually serve a useful purpose. Uh, you
You
know,
know, it's interesting when I take people through the deer path, we follow the deer path, and then the first pioneers followed those paths as well. And then the first roads that were made were those paths. And then as urban sprawl and all of that kind of stuff evolves, those are actually the roads that we follow now. So we're all actually following deer.
oh, all right. I hadn't really thought about that, but that's probably true. We have deer in the forest that run through the national parks here in DC, and the trails that we have probably originated in precisely that way. So I will give more thought to that next time I go for a walk in the woods. So then how has your journey on the path of Bhakti Yoga impacted you? How has that affected your life? Clearly, there were questions that you had that were answered or at least responded to in some way. This path must have responded to the contents of your poetry as a teenager. So, what what was the promise that you saw, and in what way has that promise been fulfilled for you and what remains
Hmm.
to be fulfilled through your journey on the path of Bhakti Yoga?
Interesting. Uh, um, when I'm working with my mentors, I there's a little story that it's very short, but to me it reveals a lot. So this man gets on a subway train with two little boys, and sits down. The train starts off, and the boys start running around and jumping on the empty seats and swinging around the poles and everything. And the other passengers, are looking at the man, the father, like, what's going on with you? Can't you control your kids? And the father's kind of like zoned out, and the kids are running around making a noise, making a ruckus. And then the woman that's sitting opposite the man finally has enough of it, and finally, turns to the man and says, "What's going on with you? Can't you control your kids? They're making a lot of noise. Keep them under control. They're disturbing everybody." And the man looks at her and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. We just left the hospital. Their mother just passed away." And that's where we're coming from. And so that information really changed the way the woman then, of course, hearing that, she became very compassionate and empathetic. And, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And now the children running around has context and um, has a new light. She's seeing the whole scene with a new perspective. And I feel that's kind of how this path of bhakti has been for me. The first thing has been knowledge and information. If we, I really feel that we swim around in so much ignorance, of how things really work or what things really are, or even who we really are. That's the first thing is who are we? What are we? Who are we? Why are we? Those questions and not even knowing those three things, who we are, what we are, and why we are, has us in so much darkness and ignorance that it's like stumbling around in a dark room. You're thumping your toe on this and you're tripping over this, and somehow you can feel something and it feels like this, and you think, oh, this is a pillow, and it's actually a dog or something. It's soft and warm, and you think, oh, I found a pillow, and actually you found a dog. Um, so for me, bhakti has been like the light going on, like illumination, understanding who I really am, understanding why I'm here, understanding why I'm here. And these things, when you get that information, when you get knowledge, the way that you see things, the way that you approach things, the way that you allow things to affect you is completely different because you're coming from um, a platform of deeper realization of something that's really solid. And that's kind of how I feel bhakti has been for me, is that I don't know what my end game is. I know that um my intent, my desire is to be able to serve unconditionally, and ultimately the highest expression of that is serving the Supreme. But as I'm doing that, I'm also trying to serve everybody else. In fact, if you serve the Supreme, you do serve everybody else. And so I don't know what the end goal will be. I would like it to be unconditional, unending, eternal service, loving service, because I feel that as I walk along that path and as I get deeper and deeper into the realizations of things around me, and I obtain more knowledge that helps me with that, I become more joyful. It's more blissful. That suffering is a choice, and when you don't have to do that, when you don't have to suffer, it's so much more fulfilling and relaxing, and things, not like I'm walking around in the world with my head in a cloud. Things happen. I mean, the last rains that we got here, I ended up with a foot and a half of water in my basement, which was not fun, but it wasn't completely devastating. I didn't throw myself on the rocks and, oh my God, it's just, okay, it's what happens. I should have been more thoughtful about how to prevent this, and let me see what I can do in the future. So, that we talking about perfection and imperfection, or finding perfection in imperfection. And so we make mistakes and we do silly things, but we learn from that. And I feel that that's what this path is a series of lessons where we learn more, not just about ourselves and about other people and about the world, but about what real joy and bliss there is waiting for us at the end of this path.
Mm.
And on the path as well. It's both the means and the end.
You know, I'm glad you connected that to the main theme of our conversation, finding perfection in imperfection, because we look at the world and it's filled with imperfection, and we look at ourselves and we are far from perfect. And we hear from yoga wisdom texts, like the Bhagavad Gita, that every endeavor has some imperfection to it. And if we're looking for or waiting for a perfect world or a perfect situation before we do something or feel as if it's time for something or what have you, then we'll just be waiting forever, for perfection paralysis.
Isn't there that saying, don't let perfection be the enemy of good, something like that?
Yes, yes, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good.
Mm.
And learning how to be relatively equipoised amidst all of this imperfection is part of the art and science of yoga. One who is, it's a symptom of a little bit of spiritual advancement, that we are not overly elated when we have a cause for happiness. We are not overly despondent when we have a cause for unhappiness, like a flooded basement. So what I hear you saying is that your practice of Bhakti Yoga over the years has helped you develop that kind of equanimity and acceptance of moving through an imperfect world while doing your best to simultaneously serve humanity and serve a transcendent truth.
I mean, how else other is there to move through the world? Just before we started, I was talking about, I love these analogies. They're great. I mean, they keep popping up and they make so much sense. Like surfing, I have great respect for the ocean. I would not attempt to try to go out on the ocean with a surfboard. That's not my thing. I will watch surfers from the beach. But if I was on a surfboard, just the whole idea of like trying to find the right wave and stay upright, and you have this whole, I don't know what they call them, but this big wave coming and then you go over the wave, and that's, to me, is what is like being in the world. You sometimes you fall over and you get like pushed under and you have to come up to the surface, grab onto your surfboard, get back on it again, get back upright and keep maneuvering. But all the time it's just like, how do you balance? How do you work with what the forces are around you to do what you want to do, to keep moving along? Hopefully there's a reason why you're doing it, but this whole idea of working with the forces around you and seeing what's coming and trying the best that you can to use your skills and abilities to stay upright. And in my case, skills and abilities is knowledge and the understanding that I am imperfect, and that I prayed a long time ago to be able to see the knowledge or the education, the lessons in each situation that I was exposed to, whether it was good or whether it was bad. Because for me, like I said, suffering is a choice, and I used to kind of get so not despondent, but like bogged down and like angry and an anxiety about things as they would be unfolding around me if they were like negative or whatever. Now it's just like, okay, this is not working out the way I thought it should work out. Clearly, I don't know everything. So what is there for me to learn in this situation? And how can I use this the next time and, be better or do better? So navigating the world like that is so much more um, enjoyable, because there's so many. My spiritual mentor always used to say, Bhakti Maharaj always used to say, you should always expect a miracle. Every day there should be miracles happening. And if they're not happening, there's something wrong. And I really, when he first said that, I kind of said, yeah, that's right. Miracles should be happening. But now I actually see miracles every day. Sometimes we call them like coincidences or, serendipity or whatever. But when things fall together, when things fall into place and things happen in a way that you didn't expect it, you were not prepared for it, it wasn't anything that you had planned. In fact, it was something that was completely unplanned, and yet it works so well. Those for me are miracles. And the more that I try um, to embrace, this path, the more of those things that happen. And it's fun, something comes up and it's like, oh wow, that's really that's really wonderful. I didn't expect that. And you just, say thank you, be appreciative, gratitude, and just keep going. I don't know if I answered any of your questions. I feel like I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but yeah.
Oh, you did. And you, in the course of your analogies and explanation that followed, you made a really wonderful point. We are surrounded by the miraculous
Mm,
at every moment. And the one of the symptoms of illusion is that we don't see it.
mm,
The ability to see and appreciate the miraculous in every small thing at every moment is both an art and a science. And you mentioned your mentor, Bhakti Swami. And when I was introducing you, I spoke about your role in helping your mentor establish the Institute for Applied Spiritual Technology. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit first, what is the Institute for Applied Spiritual Technology, and tell us a little bit about your role in bringing it into being and what kind of work you were doing there.
Well, I see on the call we have Rajulila Devidasi, who also a member of IFAST and one of the founding members. So I'm sure she actually could tell you more about this than me. But um, the Institute for Applied Spiritual Technology was an idea that Bhakti Maharaj had about, and as the title itself states, applying these technologies that we are reading in these yoga wisdom texts to our everyday life. And it might seem like yeah, isn't that what we do? But a lot of the times, sometimes things can stay very theoretical and not practical. And so we read about all of these wonderful things like we were talking about, like staying equipoised in goodness and in happiness and distress, and understanding that we're not the body, and all of this stuff. Yet how do we practically put that into practice? And that's what the Institute was and is still functioning now. Kunti and Madhava run the institute up in Maryland, and the programs that we do and the things that we when we first started were designed to kind of bring this knowledge to people in a way that they could actually see the practicality of it, the practicality of using yoga, and you yourself as a yoga practitioner and a yoga teacher, um, as a ways to, create a healthier body and a healthier, more, calm mind, using um, the mantra, this mantra meditation, sound meditation, as a way to reduce anxiety and also to reconnect us with our higher, our higher purpose. Learning how to live in community, understanding that the people that we're around are designed, are there in a greater design to help us pull the things out of ourselves that we need to get rid of in order to be able to move more succinctly on this path. And so it was a really amazingly wonderful time to be in a situation where we could nurture spiritual seekers, nurture people that were asking the same questions that I had been asking, and introduce them to this path of bhakti, and be facilitators in helping um, people discover the beauty of of realization, of self-realization, and of Krishna consciousness, of higher consciousness. So
Hmm.
I was the public relations director there for a while, so it was fun for me because my job mostly, well, it was a lot of like administrative work, and getting the books out, getting the tapes out, getting the newsletters out, but it was also creating programs that people could come to, that could be a mixture of spiritual information and education and entertainment. So it was an opportunity for me to indulge in my propensity to host things. And then have people gather, which I actually quite like. Even as an introspect, I love being able to do that and then like scurry away, into my little hole again and then pop back out and do something else and then scurry away again. So yeah, that was a lot of that was going on in the
So,
institute.
was this channeling your propensity as an extroverted introvert or as an introverted
Absolutely.
extrovert?
No, thank you. Extroverted introvert. I knew there was a term for it. I knew there was a phrase for it. I just didn't know what that was. There it is. There it is.
Okay, thank you. Um, in the second half of our conversation, I want to get to talking about your current project, Three Leaf Farmden. But before we do that, I want to open up for questions that others who are here in our conversation might have for you, and also to follow up on the Institute for Applied Spiritual Technology, known as IFAST for short. Um, if someone was interested in finding out more about IFAST, how would they do that?
Mhm. Good question. Like I said, there is a center in Maryland that Madhavacharya and Kunti host, and we have actually regular Saturday morning discussions around the philosophy from the Bhakti Yoga texts. And
Mhm.
so joining those morning programs would be really good. We have like picnics and things that happen. I think there's a picnic coming up in October that people could reach out. If you want to either reach out to Rajulila, she has like iFast there, and get in contact with that, or reach out to me. I think we'll have my contact information, and I can help put you in touch with iFast in Maryland, or from the we have there's a WhatsApp group also that shares information about things that are going on and encourages people to participate in that, so we can get that information to you.
Okay, great. If so, any of you who are watching this, you can also contact me, and I will give you the trail of breadcrumbs that will allow you to participate in what's going on with the Institute for Applied Spiritual Technology. Thank you. Um, any questions or comments from any of you who are with us live for our conversation today? You can just unmute yourself or raise your hand, or you can pop a question or comment in the chat if you like.
Hey, Elizabeth here. Hardball. Nice to see you, Shodamai.
Hi, Elizabeth.
I have a question, if you don't mind. I would like to hear a little bit more about when you decided to do this amazing endeavor, Three-Leaf Farmden, Trifolia, and how that ties into your whole life of bhakti. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Okay, so I actually, at one point I was living in DC and Maryland, and then when my husband and I decided we wanted to start a family, and my eldest daughter Ladini came along, we were still working with the institute and doing a lot of different things in there. Working with Harinam Press, um, which is a book publishing company. Um, and I we looked up one day and we realized that that Ladini was 5 years old and we had lived in five different houses, five different accommodations in the 5 years that we had had this girl. And it was like, oh my goodness. How are people, how is she going to have like sleepovers and things like that when we don't stay in one place long enough for, for her to like get friends or, put down roots. So we decided we need to find somewhere to be. Um, and it wasn't going to be the city because I didn't really like the idea of raising kids in the city. I wanted community and I wanted open spaces and greenery. And it's a long story, but we eventually ended up here in this community in Gitanagara, which is in central Pennsylvania. It's a spiritual community. And I live on a property that's about 5.25 acres, with trees and grass and bushes and lots of deer and groundhogs and rabbits. And and this is where the children grew up. And um, fast forward quite a few years, and now the children have gone. And about maybe 10 years ago, I was actually just sitting and looking at the beautiful greenery and all of this and thinking about how I got here and the role that Bhakti Maharaj had um, had done to get us here and to, invited people to come to Gitanagar, and we took him up on that and found this house for us and everything. And I was thinking to myself, it came to me strongly that this is actually not just for you. You may be living here, your children may have been raised here, but on the bigger scale of things, this is not yours and this is not just for you. There's something bigger that you should be doing with this. And now that you don't have not the distraction, but the responsibility of raising kids, you need to get on with what your purpose here should be. And for the longest time, I was trying to think, well, what is that? What should I be doing here? What could I be doing here? And again, it's kind of like when you're on that path and you are surrendered to understanding that you're part of a bigger picture of things and that you're connected, you have a relationship with the Supreme, that you can actually sit back and wait for that information to come to you, because it will come to you. Um, and it came to me one day that you need to open this up. You need to somehow or the other find a way to reach out to people that are, are withering for want of connection to the earth, and make this a place where people can come and get reconnected to nature, get reconnected to themselves, and reconnected to a higher purpose. And once that thought came, once that vision came, everything started kind of like falling into place. Um, there was another period where I wasn't quite sure how to go about doing that, and realizing that Trifolia had to be like a separate thing, but at the same time connected with Three-Leaf Farmden, which is why the names are actually, there's a play with names there, because Trifolia actually means three leaf. So, so I was realizing that, so the format that I have now, where we have this nonprofit where people can actually come and be here on the land, and we have a lot of different programs. I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about that. And then we have Trifolia, which takes the things that are grown on the land are transformed into things people can use and purchase through Trifolia, where the herbs and the tinctures and the teas and the salves and the foods and all of those things are sold through Trifolia, and they actually help each other. Like most of the money that's earned through Trifolia goes back into providing programs like the health fairs and the food distribution and the classes, and all kinds of things, from how to make tofu to how to make kombucha to how to prepare tinctures, and all of those things are all part of what Three Leaf does. So they work together very nicely, and I am again able to use my extrovert desire to bring people together and my introvert desire to just like be behind a workbench, fiddling with things and figuring out things come together and how to make different potencies and potions and things like that. Uh, yeah, so I don't know if I've covered everything, but that's really how it evolved, and I find myself trying to continue to fulfill the vision that Bhakti Maharaj had of outreach and bringing this information in a way that's practical to people, so that they can see, it's not just about living, it's not just about reading about being spiritual. You know, they would have this thing, you know, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. You know, well, how are you spiritual? How does what you're engaged in reflect in the way you treat people, or you treat the earth, or um, you know, or your outlook on life, or your perspective on life, or Bhakti Maharaj would say, you like around self-esteem. It's not about thinking of yourself less, but thinking less of yourself. How are you thinking? How are your actions and your words helping to enrich the lives of those around you? So I'm hoping that that's what TLF does, and through the products of Trifolia, that people can get a sense of you know, connection with the earth, because that's what we need. And as we connect with the earth and heal ourselves, heal our spirits, heal our mental states, heal our emotions, we can free ourselves up to be able to really understand what our highest purpose is and reconnect on that level as well.
You know, thank you. You know, one of the questions I get, one of the most important questions that I get on a very regular basis is, how does your beard look so good all the time? And here is the answer.
Oh my goodness.
Trifolia all natural beard balm, which keeps my beard totally spiritualized every day, because
It doesn't get more practical than that. That is that
yes, exactly.
spirituality and a practical, hands-on, you know, expression.
And I have put the link to Trifolia Natural Products in the chat for everyone, and of course it will be in the comments along with this video. So yes, a very, very nice partnership and a wonderful play on words to have the source of the products and the products themselves have synonyms for names. So now we know how the inspiration came about and have a general idea of the project. Can you talk a little bit more about the specifics? What do you do at Three Leaf Farmden? And I'll put the link to Three Leaf Farmden in the chat in just a moment. But what do you do? And I know you also have opportunities for others to come for both events, short-term, and long-term. You have an internship program. So tell us a little bit first about what you do and what kind of events you host when you are in extrovert mode.
Well, anything that's of value, anything that's of worth, anything that is good is actually never just one person. There's always a team, and we have a team. We have a board, and we have people that offer different classes. For example, Vrajulila is also a member of the Three Leaf Farmden team, and she's a certified counselor, grief counselor, and also certified in nonviolence communication and a whole bunch of other things. I can hardly keep up with all of the areas that Vrajulila specializes in. She offers a lot of those programs through Three Leaf Farmden. Jackie Reardon, Jadurani is also a member of the team. Achuta is also a member of the team. Tanya is also a member of the team, and they all have their different areas of expertise. Achuta is a nutrition counselor, I think. I keep getting her title incorrect, but all of these people help to provide a lot of the different programming that goes on in Three Leaf. We have different events. Okay, so I'll just kind of run through some of the things that we've done this year. We had a couple of health fairs at the beginning of the year, and these programs are open to the public. They're usually free of charge, so that our vision, our modus operandi is that your bank balance shouldn't determine the quality of your life. And so for a lot of the times, the programs that we offer are by self-guided donations, or they're free, or they're for minimal cost. And nobody's ever turned away for not being able to afford to come to a program. So that's like a general understanding that we have. So we have health fairs. We do a drum circle. This year was our eighth eighth annual transformational drum circle, Moved by the Beat, where people can come and celebrate the spring equinox in community. We do a lot of things in community because community is important, and community is how we are meant to live. And actually, even on this spiritual path of bhakti, community or sangha, spiritual sangha, sadhu sangha is an important part of being able to deeply appreciate and realize the truth in these paths is when we're doing it together, and we bounce off each other and help each other on this way. So community is an important thing on a practical level and on a spiritual level. We recently just had a Kirtan Fest, which is the power of the chanting of mantra meditation and how transformative that is. That is something that we're also trying to bring out into the greater public. So we've been doing a Kirtan Fest every year for the past 3 years up in the State College area, which is the main campus of the Pennsylvania State University. So that attracts a lot of young people, and hoping to expand that next year to a Kirtan and Yoga Fest. What else? We do a lot of workshops around health. So we do kombucha workshops. We do workshops on how to do make tofu. We do cooking classes. We have a cooking class coming up in October, which somebody is doing as part of their birthday celebration. So they'll get a chance to learn how to make food, as well as, again, bring people together. So all of these different things are things that Three Leaf Farmden works with. We collaborate with a ministry in the Harrisburg area. It's in one of the areas where it's a food desert. So there's not a lot of fresh produce and quality food there. So we work with Gitanagari to take surpluses from Gitanagari Farm, from Three Leaf Farmden, to this ministry in an inner city area, so that they can also have access to fresh produce. We're always willing and happy to work with anybody that has an idea. There's a program in Southwest Washington called The Ark, which does a lot of outreach programs, and we've been down there. We've been part of their CSA, providing herbal teas and tinctures for their CSA membership. We've also done a health fair for them as well, and a lot of Zoom workshops for them. So we are open. If anybody has any ideas, or anybody has any connections, anybody would like to bring the TLF team into an area that they feel needs this, we're very happy to be open to working with other people as well.
All right. That's a wonderful invitation. The Three Leaf Farmden website URL is in the chat for anyone who wants to check it out. And yes, I wholeheartedly encourage anyone who's watching or listening who knows of an opportunity for Yasoda and her team to be of service. Please contact her through her website, or you can contact me and I will connect you. There's also the opportunity to participate in internships.
All right.
So can you tell us a little bit about who your interns are, where they come from, and what they do with you?
Well, most of my interns come through a program called Workaway. I don't know if anybody knows what WOOF is, WOOF, I think, World Organic Farming, whatever. There's also a program called Workaways, and this is kind of like woofing, where people want to get away to a different part of the world or a different part of the country, and they will exchange work for an experience. And so on my Workaway site, we talk about 4 different areas that people can come to experience when they come here. One of them is to be nurtured spiritually, to kind of get an opportunity to delve a little bit more into their spiritual nature and that spiritual understanding, and work in getting a little bit more grounded in that. 2, working with herbal medicines and herbal and medicinal plants. So what are they? Where are they? How do they grow? What are they used for? That kind of thing. Um, Understanding what it's like and what it means to live in community. A lot of people think being in community just means a group of people living together. It's actually a lot more than that, and it can get pretty deep into what it really means to be a part of a community, especially an intentional community, and or the positive and the negative of that, which is all one kind of package, but what that means. And then also herbal medicine, community, spirituality.
Sustainable agriculture.
Thank you. Yeah, how do we grow the plants? How do we connect with the earth? How do we treat the earth in a respectful way? What are the different techniques that can be used, like permaculture and all the different things that we hear about, like mulching and rotational growing and composting and compost tea and ground covers, and how do we use all of these things to produce quality crops, and then how do you harvest that, how do you preserve them, because it's one thing growing things, but if you grow stuff and then it rots, then what's the point of that? So how do you preserve the harvest, how do you utilize what you've harvested, and all of those things all come under restorative and sustainable agriculture. So people are also interested in that. And so it's a whole combination of things, and it's been so wonderful to see people coming from all over. The last few people that we've had here have come from Australia. We had a couple from Australia that were here about a month ago. A young lady who's actually studying to become a doctor. She came from Japan. We've had people from Brazil, people from Puerto Rico, from Trinidad and Tobago, people from Baltimore, from Maryland, from Philadelphia, from North Carolina, from Vermont. Um, and it's really amazing because I'm enriched too, because I get a chance to, to find out about the culture of all these people that are coming from around the country, from around the world. I get to be a part of these people's lives for a while, and they get to come and experience all of those things that we talked about. So it's a really beautiful exchange. We stay in touch, and I never have to pay for a hotel in any of these places again. So,
another benefit.
Absolutely, a side
when you
benefit.
travel.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question about that. Insofar as who comes to stay with you and have this kind of experience, that this sounds to me like one of the advantages of youth, that someone can do this sort of thing. But before I follow up with that, I want to check back with everyone who is here joining us for this conversation live, just to see if you have any questions for Yasoda about Three-Leaf Farmden and what we've heard so far. Gail, go ahead.
Hari-kirtana, everybody. Hari-kirtana, Yasoda. Thank you for presenting this talk. Yeah, I actually have a few questions. Don't know where to start, but one of them was, actually, I wish that you would have delved a little more deeply into this concept of community, because I'm one of those people who kind of think it's like a group of people who do just live together, you know? Yeah, if you could speak more about the intention of that. And also, I was also curious about the name Farmden, you know, why it's not farm, what's the den part about? And just one last thing is, um, if you could like spell out the connection between, our getting our hands in the soil and self-realization. Like, why is it not enough for me to think that my spinach grows in Whole Foods? What does that have to do with like self-realization?
Yeah, great questions. Okay, the first one, Farmden, well, the second one, but Farmden actually is a word if garden and farm combined. So the Farmden is smaller than a farm, but bigger than a garden. So we have Farmden. And I wish I had actually thought that, but at a PASA conference, which is a conference for sustainable agriculture that's held here in Pennsylvania every year. It's been going for 30 something years now. I was in a workshop of no-till agriculture. That's where you don't dig into the ground, but you work with the ground. And he had a farm in Vermont, and I asked him, "Hey, that's a beautiful name. Can I steal that from you?" And he said, "Yeah." So that's where Farmden comes from. Smaller than a farm, bigger than a garden. Community. Somebody once told me here in this community that community means being available to help others when they need it. And that is really the essence of living in community, is that you are not just there for yourself. You're actually there to help other people in that community. That means being present and being available when other people need help, even if it's at the inconvenience of yourself. That's really what binds a community together. So I know that if I needed help, which I didn't, but if I had needed help emptying out my basement with 1.5 feet of water, I would have been able to call somebody up for them to, come and help me with that. Or if somebody calls me up and says, my car just broke down, can you drop everything and come and give me a jump? That's what I need to do. If somebody says that they are clearing out their basement or clearing out their garage and need help moving stuff to the thrift store, I make my van available for that. So community means we are there for each other, not just in the good things, not just like in the celebrations and the birthdays and the baby showers and the anniversaries and all of that, but for the bad things. Somebody's lost someone, we show up for them. Somebody is in the hospital, we show up for them. Somebody has just had a baby and needs people to come and bring them food, we show up for them. So community means showing up for the people that you are around. And in a hyper capitalistic world where all of these things are being sold off as means of making money, elder care, childcare, grocery delivery, all of this is now means of making money. In order for us to get back to a sense of who we are and what the community is, we need to be able to be gifting those things through love and not selling those things as a profit. So that's basically what community is. And as for realizing that your spinach doesn't grow in Whole Foods, it may sound funny, but when I was a substitute teacher, one of the programs that Penn State Extension did was to actually bring fresh fruits and vegetables into the classrooms in the inner city areas to show kids what things like raspberries looked like, or kiwi fruit, or, all of these different things. And a lot of the kids thought broccoli actually did come from the grocery store, that it just, appeared there. And so So when you're actually working with the earth and you have your hands in the earth and you're sweating and moving things and watering plants, you can see the seed that you put in the earth grow into a seedling, and then you take that seedling and you put it outside and you water it and it grows into a plant, and then that plant produces peppers, or it produces cauliflowers, or it produces sweet potatoes, or it produces herbs that you then cut and you chop up and put into a dish that you're making and offering. That's where you can really see that you're part of a bigger picture, that everything around you is part of a bigger picture, that you're not distinct from it, you're not over it, you're not in dominance of it, you're actually just a part of a big web of things that are going on. And then you ask yourself the question, how do I make this better? Or how am I a part of this? Or how did I lose that understanding that I was a part of this in the first place? And try to regain that. So I hope that answers some of the questions.
Yeah, and I guess you will eventually come to the point where all those things come from God, basically.
Yeah.
And that would be the connection.
Yeah. And you cannot but come to that point, because you cannot control the sun, you can't control the rain, and you need those two things to grow that plant. You can't control, you can try to control whether things are going to eat that plant or not. Or how you can keep all the things that want to eat that plant from eating that plant. You're working with, you can't kill every living entity that has its eyes on your plant. So you have to work with those entities as well, So yeah, very much. And this is just one thing from a microbiological point of view. That there are soil organisms that actually trigger the dopamine. The smell of these organisms, the bacteria in the soil, triggers the dopamine in your brain to bring you pleasure, which is why putting your hands in the soil and working with the soil is so uplifting and grounding. There's a pun there, but it's so uplifting because it's designed that way. The sound of running water, initiates this sense of well-being. The smell, honeybees vibrate their wings in the key of C, which relieves anxiety. So nature is not our enemy, and yet we living in these little houses that and air conditioned and heat pumped. And when do we get out into nature? When do we go and literally roll in the grass? At least walk on the earth in our bare feet, feel the sun on ourselves. All this is so important to our well-being. Eating whole foods and knowing where your food comes from, all of this is so important. And yet we're moving further and further and further away from it. And I'm wondering why we're so depressed, we're so anxious, we have the highest rate of cancer, the highest rate of heart disease, the highest rate of this and that, as we move farther and farther away from our healing mother. So it's so important that we connect back with her. And anyone that wants to do that, to connect back, Harry has put the information in the chat. Get in contact with me, come and feel what it's like to be here in Three-Leaf Farmden, and to take a weekend or a week or a month in connecting in this lifestyle.
Something I wholeheartedly encourage everyone here and everyone watching or listening after the fact to do. This has been a wonderful conversation. I especially enjoyed hearing you speak about your understanding of community and how much deeper and more significant it is than just people who live together and celebrate together, but also who come together with the understanding of being available, no matter how inconvenient it may be, for one another. I think that's a really wonderful definition of community, and that's going to be, I think, one of my big takeaways from this conversation. I hope everyone else also has an equally significant takeaway. There were so many things to choose from. Yasoda, thank you so very much for taking the time to
Thank you for the invitation.
speak
It's
with us. Oh, yeah. Well, my pleasure, and we'll do it again. There's plenty more that we could be talking about, so hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
great.
All
Thank
right.
you all for being a part of this.
Thank you all very much for being here. I look forward to seeing you next time for our monthly community conversation. Have a wonderful rest of your day.